Hello, everybody. Welcome to StraightA. Dawson here,
Nathan here.
and Ben with his signature wave, of course. And we're back with another episode of our free agency kind of gradings. This episode will be the East, so AFC and NFC East we'll be covering here today, giving them some grades just for the free agency signings and their losses and re-signings and all that good stuff. Before we get started, though, please leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and comment any suggestions for the channel going forward. Get right into the video. Of course, starting off, we're going to go to the AFC. We're just going to jump right into things. And first of all, we got the Buffalo Bills. And as of recording this, we're debating on recording this yesterday, and I'm thankful that we didn't, because as of a few hours ago, Stephon Diggs was officially traded to the Texans for a second rounder, and I think the Bills also gave away got a fifth and sixth or something like that. Yeah.
It was literally like 3-4 hours because it was right before I left for class.
Yeah, so it's crazy. I'm glad we didn't record it yesterday because that's going to change a lot with our gradings, at least my gradings. And I know we were kind of hinting to it before the video started, but they do not have the best free agency. Looking at the players they gained, Deion Dawkins, Will Clapp, and even then Will Clapp I think is more of a meme than is like a really good player in terms of a signing. Mitch Trubisky has the backup to Josh Allen now. I mean, I don't see many signature names on here that are going to add a lot of value. I like Teron Johnson. He's not too bad. So that might be another one. But and if you look at who they lost, I mean, say what you will about Gabe Davis, he was, he had his moments. Latavius Murray, Kyle Allen, whatever, blah blah. But of course, Stephon Diggs being gone hurts a lot. Of course, this one's not
Their whole secondary, pretty much.
I guess
a Pro Bowl secondary like that. You look at the lineup between Tre'Davious White, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer. That is literally a Pro Bowl lineup for a secondary. All gone.
Leonard Floyd.
But they kept DeMar Hamlin.
Yeah, they've kept DeMar Hamlin, heaven forbid. I mean, that's a lot they lost with almost nothing gained. I think we're kind of talking about maybe is this an F tier class. And I'm going to give it a D- at the moment, but I'm going to hear y'all's thoughts before I kind of submit that finally.
You want to go, Ben?
Yeah, I'll go for it. I think this is definitely one of these situations where it's required to give him an F, but you kind of have to understand the situation a little bit. It seemed like this was the year, this was kind of the final year last year, this window of players. Everyone was just getting a little bit older, and they knew that their window was closing. And now they're going to have to kind of rebuild around Josh again because they weren't able to get it done over the past 3 years with that star-studded roster, which is ridiculous. But, it's kind of like an unfortunate F, but, you just kind of have to understand they're just trying to rebuild. They're trying to hopefully get this all fixed within a year or two.
I mean, like I was saying before, they brought in some DBs, Taylor Rapp, Mike Edwards, but Teron Johnson. Those aren't bad DBs by any means. Well, Taylor Rapp is already on the team. But, those aren't – Mike Edwards and Teron Johnson, the two that they signed new, aren't bad by any means, but that's just they lost so much talent in the DB. They beefed up their line a little bit with their defensive line, with DaQuan Jones. But, overall, their losses, I mean, they brought in Curtis Samuel, who's a great wide receiver, don't let me go, but he's not Stephon Diggs. And then not to mention they lost Gabe Davis. So, overall, I don't think I'm going to give it an F now that I look at it. But it's just they're not rebuilding, but they're moving on from their set of core players that they've had the past several seasons. And they just haven't brought in the talent that they've got rid of. So I'm going to give it a D-.
Yeah, I think I'm stuck at D-. I think Ben actually made a point that I feel like solidifies my D- is that it was time about to move on from a lot of these players. It was about time. Say what you will, maybe getting rid of Stephon Diggs on paper is bad, but also realistically, he wasn't happy. If you don't have a happy receiver, you're not going to get very good production. You're not going to get very good synergy. And then you got older players, and at least you're bringing in people that maybe you're bringing in multiple people that at least maybe one of them will work out and kind of help patch a hole. So that's why I'm kind of D- is probably more appropriate here because they didn't do awful. You still got Deion Dawkins and Teron Johnson. I feel like there's a couple decent signings here. So I'm going to go D- here, solidified. But fun little conversation there. But we're gonna move on to the Miami Dolphins. And holy crap, I'll even be able. Yeah, okay, I fit them all in there with who they got.
This is from bad in the Bills to honestly probably not the best, but one of the best.
Go and start us off.
In my opinion,
you're a signature Dolphin guy, so.
Well, look, you've already won free agency when you let go of Chase Claypool and Eli Apple. I just want to get that pointed out. They did lose people like Van Ginkel, which we talked about yesterday, Cedric Wilson, who's been a consistent wide receiver for them. They lost Robert Hunt, Xavier Howard, guys that have been there for a little bit. But you got to look at who they picked up. Raheem Mostert, which I think, did they re-sign him? Or was he already on the – or
Yeah.
Yeah,
he just signed a new deal.
They brought Jonnu Smith in, a good tight end. They got Shaq Barrett, Jordan Poyer. Like they're making their run. I'm not sure I can give this an A, but they have made some big turns over. They beefed up the offensive line, which was much needed to protect Tua. But other than that, I think I'm going to go with a B+ on this. This is a good free agency. And so I really think this is going to be a good season for the Dolphins. They were kind of a meme last year with they couldn't beat any good teams, and it was kind of true. Like we saw that several times last year. But yeah, I think this is going to be a good year for the Dolphins.
I don't know that I fully agree with that. I mean, they kept talent like Ahmed and Mostert, and they still have HN in the backfield. And they kept some of their lower-level receivers. They brought in Jonnu, who's a good run blocker, good pass blocker, good for a little jailbreak screen, block and set type like that. I'm not exactly a fan of some of the O-line signings. They definitely brought in some good people on defense, whether it's re-signing, bringing in Poyer. I don't like the amount that they lost. I feel like they just lost way, way too much. They let some really good people go. Xavier Howard being one of them. Eli Apple, I think he's a great coverage corner. A lot of people kind of make fun of him because he talks a lot, but I mean, he's a really good player. Justin Houston is an elite edge rusher. Now, I will agree that you win free agency if you get rid of Chase Claypool, but Christian Wilkins, Apple, Howard, I don't like the direction this team's going. I'm probably giving this a C because I think they, did a good job keeping some people, bringing in a couple of good players, but I don't like who they lost.
Yeah, I think actually I'm gonna go a little bit more different of an approach than both of you guys. I kind of look at this like their offense really just didn't change, in my opinion. Like, yeah, maybe the O-line got slightly worse, but like it's almost negligible to me. Then I'm looking at defense. Defense is what's really killing me here, is that their defensive line looks probably a little bit better, but also I'm not a fan of where Jordan Poyer is at his career. It's a 1-year signing, so I get it, and I'm not a fan of any of the DBs they use to replace. Even Eli Apple, I kind of agree with Ben in that case. Like again, Eli Apple is a little bit meme, but they lost some decent. Like they lost three decent secondary pieces here, and they added maybe 2 if Kendall Fuller, I guess, could be. I don't know. I'm not a fan of the secondary. And again, Dolphins, I think, also were a team that really needed to improve their secondary, and I don't think they did. And I'm kind of leaning to a D+ here because I don't think they got better. I think they stayed about same on offense, and I think their defensive line maybe arguably got better. So I'm going to solidify a D+. I think I feel like it's too much of a change for me to say I can give it a C. But I think
that's pretty fair. Yeah, I mean, I was definitely leaning towards D+ as well.
Wow, we went in completely different directions.
Well, like
I just happened to because they kept the offense, but I would not disagree with the D+.
It's just I see this and nothing changed except for the secondary, in my opinion. It just feels like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like enough of a change in the positive direction. I don't know. I think they didn't improve in areas they needed to. So I think D+ is kind of my thoughts. And I think C is like you just kind of stayed the same team or got negligible gains and negligible losses. versus I think a B it means you've improved. A D means you've gotten worse. And I think the Dolphins got worse here. I'll be honest with you. So yeah, D plus.
It could have possibly gotten worse by a small amount, but I will say that they did keep some of those good pieces on offense. Like Mostert for sure is probably Mostert is probably what saved him from going down to D plus for me. If they didn't re-sign him, then it would have, you know, it would not have been good if they had done that or traded him because obviously he wasn't going to walk because he's not set. But they had traded him off or included him in a big package or something. I don't know how I would have felt about it, but yeah, I mean, they definitely did not get better. I'll put it that way.
And arguably, this is also a small nitpick more so than anything. Is I think you need a third wide receiver behind Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and I don't think Braxton Berrios that guy. I feel like you need either a tight end, which Jonnu Smith could be that. I do kind of like Jonnu, but like they don't have a third guy there for me, like at all. Like I think their third receivers are more like a wide receiver 4 or 5 versus a lot of other people's wide receiver 3s, and I think it's also just something small. So it's a weird situation, but Dolphins aren't in a bad situation. It's just like a weird one. All right, then we got the Patriots. Another interesting one because it feels like at least initially my thoughts going into it was like a C here. But they lost some names here. They definitely clearing the board for a new kind of era in New England. But they got some like younger-ish talent, like mid-age talents, and re-signs quite a few guys too. So like this almost just feels like a natural C. Like I'm looking at this. I'm like they re-signed Hunter Henry, and I'm a big fan of Hunter Henry. They re-signed some of their key pieces on the O-line here. Jalen Reagor. Sorry, I just saw that name. I was like, oh, there goes the name from yesterday. And the offense, they didn't really get any better, but also they didn't have a good offense in the first place. Mike Gesicki, they lost Mike Gesicki, but again, I get that he didn't work in the system. Zeke's not a big loss. Devontae Parker is probably the biggest loss on this whole board, if I'm looking initially. Matthew Slater, I guess, is retired, but whatever. I think I'm just gonna go initial C. I don't see much that really gained them. I don't feel like they lost a lot, but I'm kind of also leaning in the D plus direction. But I think I'm gonna go with a C grade for me.
See, I'm probably gonna go ahead and jump to the D plus, and I'm kind of regretting leaving the Dolphins at a C now that I've made this grade. But I mean, they have done literally nothing. They signed Antonio Gibson, the fumble god. Like, and Alexander Madison are having a mid-off right now. It is insane. And I mean, they didn't do bad as far as like price range, and they re-signed Kendrick, which is fine, but they didn't really do anything. I would honestly say the best thing they did was getting Brissett, because I think he's like a career backup that actually deserves a starting spot.
Valid. $8 million deal is not bad for him too.
Yeah. I agree with you guys. They lost, Mac Jones, which he wasn't heading in any good direction. He did good his rookie year. Devontae Parker, Pharaoh Brown, Gesicki. They lost big guys on the offense like Trent Brown and Riley Reeve. And then J.C. Jackson, which is a pretty big one. And then I just feel like they didn't pick up what they needed on defense. Yeah, they got Kyle Duggar. I guess he was. And then Armon Watts on the defensive line. But other than that, Hunter Henry, they re-signed him. They got Austin Hooper. But, like, just nothing comes out and screams, like, good. Granted, they're rebuilding after the Belichick era. It's a new coach and everything, so they got a new system going. But, I mean, I'm going to sit here with a D, probably a D+. Didn't get any better. But I don't think they got much worse. Granted, it was a low floor from last year. Low floor from last year. More like a basement, really. But, I'll agree with you guys there.
I think I'll still stick at a C for him. I don't know. This feels like it doesn't move me. And Kyle Duggar, I do like Kyle Duggar, so, that'll keep him at C for me solidly. Well, that was an easy little knockout one. Moving on to the last AFC East team, we got the New York Jets. And I actually don't know much about their offseason, so if one of y'all want to start for this one.
Well,
Ben?
I mean, they didn't do necessarily a whole lot as far as quantity, as you can see, but the quality of guys I think is great, especially with with A Rod coming back. You know, you got Mike Williams coming in. That'll be great. Going along with Garrett Wilson, that is such a destructive 1-2 punch at the receiver position, along with having Brees Hall in the backfield for you. Absolute battering ram. Bringing in an absolute ripper in Hassan Reddick. That is such an elite edge rusher that is slept on. He is going to do dividends. And of course, re-signing my goat, Greg the Leg. Got to give it to him. Let's see. I'll give him a B minus.
Yeah, they lost an aging Randall Cobb and Corey Davis, along with Uzama, and they lost quite a bit on the offensive line. And Jordan Whitehead, who was kind of aging as well. But with that being said, like you brought up Hassan Reddick, who is a great underrated guy. Javon Kinlaw, which is a big signing for them as well. They beefed up the D line. And the big one is brought in Mike Williams, who is coming off a pretty bad injury. But I think this is, barring injury, this is a pretty good Jets team that can make the playoffs like we expected them to last year. But as we know, that kind of got thrown under the rug with Aaron Rodgers getting injured on the fourth play in his Jets career. But other than that, I'm going to go with probably a B minus here.
Yeah, I think I took the words out of my mouth there. I think B minus just feels appropriate. I was actually gonna go B plus for a second, but then it kind of, some of these guys just kind of add up for me. Like, you know, I think losing Becton, I think Becton's pretty good. Bryce Huff, Jordan Whitehead. I know they didn't really end with the Jets too well, but I like those guys, and I feel like that kind of puts me in like the B minus area for them. Because I think they gained a lot, but I mean they lost some quality kind of younger studs that I think are going to benefit other teams. Which isn't the biggest deal, but I think B minus is pretty appropriate for the Jets here. Okay, so we kind of in agreement mostly for the AFC East, so it is now time for the NFC East. Bless you.
Thank you.
Well, Ryan, next up, we are now going to the NFC to go and analyze the NFC East. And, well, it's going to be productive for the latter three teams, but we're starting off with the Dallas Cowboys, which has been already a joke on the internet of them absolutely doing nothing. And as you see, their signings are thin. We'll say thin. So let's keep it on this screen for now of their losses. And I actually didn't realize how many people they really lost. I knew they didn't gain anybody, but they actually lost some quality players here too. Stephon Gilmore, Tyler Biadasz, Tyron Smith, Michael Gallup, Tony Pollard. I mean, that adds up. And I mean, when you don't add anybody and don't really re-sign everybody, or anybody, like Eric Kendrick's probably the most notable name to me there. It's pretty bad, and I feel like it's kind of I feel bad for giving them the F, but again, it's one of those things where I think you have to understand the circumstance, as Ben said with the Bills earlier. The reason I'm going to give this a quick, I think this hasn't been talked about enough. I think the Cowboys are kind of smart for not doing anything this offseason though too, because they have some money they have to pay pretty soon. They have like some contracts. If they want to keep like CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, Dak Prescott, if they want to keep him around. They're going to be some expensive contracts, and Cowboys aren't the best in cap. I mean, they're not the worst, but they don't probably have the money to sign all three of those guys. They want to keep them. So I think they're getting a little too hounded for that kind of move, but, I mean, unfortunately, just got to be an F tier. When you don't really do anything, you don't sign anybody but lose, like, some quality players, just kind of happens. So F tier for me.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a D minus for me. I like the Eric Kendrick signing, but, yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, they lost Tony Pollard, Michael Gallup, Stephon Gilmore. Good guys. And they just picked up Eric Hendricks, which, I mean, like you said, that's a good signing. So I'm gonna have to go with a D minus and agree with him here, just because they picked up a good guy, but they lost quite a bit, and as far as talent goes. So I'm not gonna give them an F. But they just haven't done much. And like Dawson said, that's probably smart for them. But that's not smart in the sense that they've been needing to make a push kind of the jokes of the NFL, haven't won since the '90s, and they make the playoffs every year with a good regular season, and it's a joke in the playoffs. But yeah, they just didn't make those moves they probably needed to make to get further in the playoffs. So I'm gonna have to go with a D-.
Yeah, it's fair. I just don't know. When you lose that much talent and not really add anything, I feel like I just had to give him an F. I do like Derrick Hendricks, so it is a small blip. It's F plus, F. If anybody's keeping up with that, but I'm not, so it's F for me. Moving on, though, I think the rest of this division's really fucking interesting because the New York Giants even I think are a very interesting pick here. Ben, you want to start us off on the Giants here?
I think this is terrible. I just don't like this at all. Mm-hmm. They lost so many guys. They lost the probably best player on their team in Saquon Barkley, and they let Xavier McKinney go. They let Adoree go. They let Ashawn Robinson go. Some of the other guys that weren't as impactful, like Shepard and Isaiah Simmons, who was more of a backup linebacker, But, I mean, they lost some really big-name guys, and the only thing they really did was trade for Brian Burns. So, I don't know. I mean, they essentially got him for a second-round pick, which is, a fair price. They didn't overpay for him. But other than that, they didn't exactly do anything just great. So, D+.
Yeah, I'm not gonna agree. They got Drew Lock as a backup, if you want to call him that, for the terrible Daniel Jones signing they had last year, I believe. But like you said, they lost Saquon. They lost some wide receivers. They lost a good group of secondary guys in Adoree Jackson, Xavier McKinney. But they just didn't sign anyone spectacular. They got Devin Singletary. And then, like you said, the Brian Burns trade, which is a pretty good trade for what they paid for him. But, yeah, it's not great. It's not what the Giants need. I know they're kind of rebuilding or whatever you call that the Giants have been doing since Eli Manning's left. They had that good run 2 years ago now. But this just isn't it. So I'm gonna have to go agree with Ben here and go D+.
Yeah, see, I'm kind of looking at the more positive side of D+. Seems like y'all are more on the negative side of D+, which is valid. I don't know. I like the Brian Burns signing. I think Brian Burns is talented. I think he's still got plenty of time to develop. They have him on a contract for now his prime. I think, or what should be his prime at least. So I like Brian Burns. I think that carries a lot, and their depth is. Their depth is something, but they did lose some other key players. So I'm more on the positive side of D+. Obviously, I think they did get worse because Saquon hurts a lot. Isaiah Simmons, again, kind of like as Ben kind of said. Xavier McKinney, I think, hurts a little bit. The wide receiver room was already bad as it was, and I think Sterling Shepard and Paris Campbell were not the brightest spots, but we're not like the worst spots on that team. So it's unfortunate. So I'm giving them D+, but it's like you're staying up there, I guess, type of D+. Moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles, and man, we talked about the Cowboys and Giants, and I think we're going to the exact opposite direction when it comes to the Eagles. I'm going to have to actually make this a little bit zoomed out for their pickups. Trayton, give us a start here.
Well, it's already, they've lost Marcus Mariota, so there's no chance of them winning a Super Bowl anytime soon. No, I'm just kidding. But they lost their whole running back room, essentially, at least the notable ones, and Rashad Penny, Boston Scott, and DeAndre Swift. They lost Julio, which, I mean, he isn't one of their top two wide receivers. They lost Quez Watkins. So those are two, 3-4 guys, wide receiver 3-4 that they lost. They lost Fletcher Cox, obviously he retired, and then Shaq Leonard, who they just got. They lost Kevin Byard, who they just got. And then when you look at their pickups, obviously Saquon Barkley, that's their new running back one, which is a really good signing. They got Harris Campbell, Devontae Parker. Those are replacing those wide receivers 3 and 4. But other than that, it's not been stellar. They got Devin White and C.J. Gardner-Johnson, so those are some good guys to beef up their defense. But yeah, it's not terrible, but it's not, outstanding. I think that Saquon Barkley is kind of like their headline guy that they've got this free agency. So I'm gonna go with a B minus. Yeah, no, I don't know. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, B plus. It's a good. It's not a bad free agency by any means. I'm just kind of on the fence between B plus and B minus. It's a pretty decent free agency, but I think my final one will be. I'll go B plus. This is the final.
This was a pretty solid free agency so far. Everyone they lost is pretty dispensable unless they retired or Shaq Leonard or Hassan Reddick. But they brought in so many good players for sure. I think they just made their team better, whether it's re-signings, trades, free agency. All of the above. I think they've done a pretty good job. They haven't just brought in a ton of star talent, but a bunch of sneaky ones. Albert O is the big one to me. I think that he is such a great tight end, and I think he's going to fit in really well. Probably will have some fantasy impact on Dallas Goedert. But and then on the defensive side, CJ, good player. Zach Braun is a solid player. They kept Devin White. I I like all their moves. I would probably give them a B minus. Just because, sometimes you can't help retirement, but those were some really, really big pieces that they lost to retirement, and you just can't really, sometimes you can't quite come back from that in a couple weeks.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I'm gonna go A. If I kind of look at this, if there's only a couple teams I feel like deserve an A, I feel like the Eagles have to be one of them. Like Saquon's gonna help make that run game for the Eagles so much different. I love DeAndre Swift, but Saquon Barkley is better by a long shot. The offensive line is still largely intact. I think leadership wise, Jason Kelce retiring is gonna be kind of a rough thing for them. Driscoll a little rough, but when you re-sign Landon Dickerson, I think that was such an important re-signing for them. Albert O will be awesome at tight end. I think you said it best there, Ben. I agree fully. Is that there's no, besides Saquon maybe, and there's no other big S plus type signing, but they have a lot of sneaky star dev type players and Madden type deal is how I would describe it. Like those kind of sneaky guys like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Devin White, Aquara, Bryce Huff, Landon Dickerson's re-signing Albert O, Devontae Parker. I like Devontae Parker. Then you got Saquon Barkley leading the class, and Kenny Pickett is not a bad backup for Jalen Hurts because it keeps that same type of dynamic of their offense. It's not like changing up to a pocket offensive guy. He's more of a scrambler, improviser type guy. So I'm giving him an A. I know a lot of they lost some kind of guys that kind of hurts with retirement, like Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox, but I like this enough where I think they recovered in the best way they could, considering how much they lost and I still think they got better. I feel like it almost jumps them up to the A. I can see the B plus, but I feel like I have to give the A to somebody, and I think the Eagles deserve it. Moving on to the Washington Commanders. Of the ones, this is the one I've heard the least about, and I have to actually zoom out again to fit all these names on the board. Because I feel like I've not heard a ton about the Commanders here. But kind of just looking at who they lost, doesn't look like many people. Logan Thomas, Curtis Samuel. I'm not very familiar with many of their offensive line talent here, or the defensive line talent, actually. Cameron Curl is the only notable name for me there. So no one too notable in that side of things. Let's see who they kind of re-signed. Tyler Bidassaz, like him. Zach Ertz, that's a nothing signing type deal. Eckler, he's fine. He's kind of past his kind of prime point. Bobby Wagner, wow, they signed a lot of older guys. I'm looking at this, I'm like, they signed a bunch of 30-year-olds for 1 year, 2 year deals here. This is weird actually. So it feels like they technically got better, but more like a Band-Aid type better, So I feel like my initial gut seeing who they lost and everything is probably B minus, but like it's kind of like an iffy B minus type deal. Like it feels like they technically got better, but I don't know how much better it really is going to help them in a year or so. So I'll kind of hear y'all's opinion on it because like if they're going for the win, go for it, I guess. But I don't know how much these older guys like Bobby Wagner is going to help or Zach Ertz. They got Mariota, so there you go, Trayson. I mean, that's a S tier right there, A tier right there, A grade. Yeah, I'm gonna go B minus, but I'm still in the filling out process of this one. But I think B minus is fine if you just consider 1 year, I guess.
I'll probably go B plus. This is probably one of the better free agencies that I've seen so far. Um, Not a whole lot negative to talk about. Jeremy Chin is one of the best safeties, and bringing in guys like Jamison Crowder, that's a great receiver that you want to have on your team for sure. Austin Eckler leading the pack. It's a great shifty guy. He may not fit well in that scheme, but we'll see what happens with the restructured O line and see how it fares. See if they change up plays, and because who knows, they're probably going to draft a QB. It's pretty determined that that's what's going to happen. So we'll see who goes to him, and then we'll be able to see how well that offense can really work. Because Eckler, and while Ertz is a little older, definitely provides some leadership. Crowder is a great one. I think that offense could have a good bit of sneaky potential. Wagner, Chin, Pierre, I like those three defensive signings a whole lot. Definitely provides a good structural foundation to start off the year for sure. But yeah, overall, I think this is a B plus. Didn't get enough for the A, I don't think, but it was close.
Yeah, I agree. Uh, I kind of agree with both of you to an extent. Like Dawson said, this is more like, a Band-Aid type thing. But for who they lost to who they gained, they 100% got better. Especially, Austin Eckler, Jamison Crowder, Jeremy Chin, Zach Ertz, a lot of older guys, but guys that can still make a difference on the field. I got to go with a B plus here because they just, they were not great last year. But this team isn't going to win a Super Bowl, which isn't what they're trying to do, obviously. But they're going to get a rookie QB more than likely. And I feel like this is a team that can, not win their division, but maybe make a wild card push. So yeah, I think this is a B plus free agency for the Commanders or Redskins or football team, whatever they are now.
Oh yeah. Well, awesome. I think that's all of them, right? Yeah, the perfect. That was actually a lot easier than I thought it would be for the NFC East because I knew they had a lot of signings, but honestly, when you break it down, it's actually not too bad. And honestly, they all did pretty solid. Even the Giants, I think, in their own way, kind of are all right. But Eagles and Commanders kind of carrying that division there. So cool to see. Either way, though, guys, that is the AFC and NFC East. Next time will be AFC South and NFC South. That'll probably be sometime next week. I'll probably upload this video in the AFC and NFC North sometime this week, the same week, and then next week, week of like April 10th and all that, you'll get the other two videos. So hope you guys enjoy the content. Please stick around for more. StraightA is out of here. See you guys.